Hello, welcome to Marriage and Relationship Conversation. My name is Adrian, and I am so pleased to come and just spend some time with you. And I am also glad to see that you can take some time and be with me and join me. Sorry for starting a bit late. Technicalities these days, they just pop up here and there. So I think that's the reason for starting a little bit late. But anyhow, we are here, and I am so glad to see you and to have you. Good evening. Thank you very much. So if you are just joining me, or if you have just joined and you are watching me, I would be glad just to know that you are here with me. So if you can just drop a message just to say hello, to say hi, and we'll be able to acknowledge you. So thank you so much once again. I'm sure people will be joining me on Facebook and also on YouTube, and there will be people joining from different places. So for different people, it's different time zones. So it's difficult to say good evening because good evening, it's evening time here in the UK, but it will be a different time elsewhere if you are watching me. So once again, thank you so much for joining me. Just quickly drop me a message and I'll be able to acknowledge you if you do not mind. So yeah, last week we were not able to broadcast. The reason being, of course, that we were having issues to try and connect because, as you probably may be aware, we have been trying to present in two different locations. So I am here in the UK, and my lovely wife is somewhere else, and we were trying to use technology to try and come together and just do that sort of presentation, but we were unable to do that last week. This week has been a bit challenging as well, and we have not been able to get together as we normally do. So I am afraid you are stuck with me. So you will be with me this evening just by myself. I believe my wife should be watching, but she was unable to come on board and to join me. So yeah, so I'm so glad to be coming and to be and also to have you join me. We will continue our conversation as we normally do, and obviously I'll expect a bit more interaction from you, since I will just be by myself. So I think I could do with a little bit of some encouragement, and that will go really, really well. So good evening. Thank you so much for joining. Good evening. Good evening. I can see all those messages coming through. Thank you so much. Now, before I proceed, I just wanted to quickly just appreciate those of you that were able to join me on the 22nd of October, which was my gorgeous wife's birthday. And those of you that were, gracious enough and lovely and good enough to accept that invitation to come and just celebrate the day that she was born, I just wanted to appreciate you, and I just wanted to say thank you so much for making that day special for her. It was really a wonderful day. It was an awesome day, and I loved it. Well, one of my friends told me that I actually scored some points, which were going to, which are going to take me through the next 6 months. So maybe the next 6 months, I may not need to do a lot, because I think I did quite a lot. Well, that was according to my other friend, but obviously I'll continue doing what I know to do on daily basis. So yeah, you'll be with me this evening, and I am so glad to be with you as well. Right. So I think a few weeks back we began by just talking about the subject that we've been dealing with, which has been communication. I think we've been on this subject for quite some time now, and we've looked at all the different aspects of it. And I think the week before the 22nd, we were just talking about being able to listen better. And I think that was part 3 that we were looking at. So we covered that quite extensively, and I'm just going to just do a quick recap so we can all just get ourselves up to speed, because obviously there's been a period of time when we've not been together. So it is possible that, people would forget what we talked about. So we began by just talking about how we can listen better to our spouses, how we can be better listeners under, of course, the theme of communication. And we picked a few things. I think we picked about 4 items that we said, if we do these things, then we will be able to, to position ourselves in a place where we have at least a good listening ear to our spouse when they're trying to communicate something to us. So we talked about being able to mirror. So when your spouse says something and you mirror it back to them. So mirroring is simply asking whether what they said is what you heard is what they said. So that normally eliminates misunderstandings. Like we've said in the past, some spouses have said, every time I try to communicate with either my husband or my wife, they misunderstand me. So when you mirror, it takes away that misunderstanding, because you ask them, did you say this? Or I heard you say this. Did I hear you correctly? And they will be able to say, yes, you did. And then the misunderstanding is thrown out of the window. So we also talked about being able to empathize with the spouse when they bring an issue, or when they're talking about something. When we show empathy, then we create that atmosphere of safety, and then we encourage dialogue and communication. We also talked about being able to validate them. So when they bring an issue and we are talking about something, we should not just shut it down. We should be able to encourage a conversation. And the way we encourage a conversation is by not responding, not answering back immediately, but being able to validate by, telling them that whatever the subject matter is, we do understand why that is an issue for them, and why they are bringing that issue up. So we assure them that, yes, we understand if they are, if they're upset, if they are angry about something, we should be able to validate that feeling and say, yeah, I can understand why you feel that way about the issue that you are presenting, and not really to shut them down and say, oh, for God's sake, why are you even upset about that? That's not an issue to really get upset about. It's a straightforward matter. You shouldn't really feel like that about the issue. But once we do that, then we shut the conversation down. So when we validate them, then we are encouraging them to come out and be able to communicate. So that's a way. That's one way that we can position ourselves as listeners in that place where we are able to encourage dialogue. The other thing that we talked about also was being able to be curious and to to just to understand. I think being curious, we were calling it to wonder and to look under. That's what we were calling it, to wonder and to look under. So when there is something to talk about and the spouse has presented an issue and we are talking about it, we need to have that attitude of wondering why this issue, why this, why does my spouse feel so strongly about this, and also to look under by saying there might be something that's causing this. So there could be more to this than just what they're saying. So it's just being curious, just being able to listen and to show that interest. And once we are curious, we listen, we show that interest, then you realize that we encourage our spouse to come out and be able to talk and freely express themselves. So that's what we talked about. We obviously talked about being able to, when an issue comes, we should be able to look at it and be able to flip it. We were calling it reframing it. So we should be able to look at, being able to reframe. And when we talked about being able to reframe it, we were saying we should be looking out for certain things. We talked about looking for the positives in whatever they have presented. I think we looked at a number of things, which obviously I can't go into details talking about because we covered that extensively. So any conversation will have some strengths, will have some benefits, will have some intentions to it. It will have certain some things that can provoke us to grow. So we need to be able to, when we are listening, we should be able to look at the positives that are coming out of that sort of conversation. So we covered all that by looking at all those things. Now, tonight, I just wanted to quickly just talk to you about one of the things that is normally present in our conversations, which we don't normally think about. We normally do not think about this because it really doesn't cross our mind unless one has been sensitized to it or unless one has been drawn to it. We normally don't think about it when we are in some kind of a conversation. So yes, we can mirror, we can empathize, and we can validate, and we can wonder and look under, and we can reframe the challenge. But if that thing that I am just going to draw your attention to this evening is not attended to consciously, then you realize that actually the way that we are going to be able to pick what someone is saying will be somehow affected. That will be affected. So this evening I wanted to talk to you about the filters, the listening filters that we normally have when we are listening to someone. Of course, in this environment, we're talking about listening to a spouse, or maybe even listening to a child, or maybe listening to a colleague, or listening to a friend. There is always something that is playing in the background, and we don't normally focus on that. And those are what we are calling the filters. So every one of us has got those filters. When we are listening, we all have filters. So before we just quickly talk about the filters, I was just trying to look at the definition of a filter, and it was interesting. I found there were, there were different ways of trying to define it. So it's a way that has not been defined in one specific way, but it's been defined according to the context in which it's been used. So, so the definition, which was a noun, obviously, was the English definition was a filter is any substance, be it a cloth, a paper, or a porcelain, or it says, or a layer of charcoal or sand. It says through which liquid or gas is passed to remove suspended impurities or recover solids. I'm sure this is like just one of those definitions that I just found right at the top of it. And obviously it defines it in that context where it talks about it being a cloth or it being maybe a paper or something porous. I remember, I think when we were growing up, well, even now, I think we normally, if you make a cup of, a cup of tea and you have like loose tea, not obviously now you have, tea in bags, which is all being put together, and obviously the bag itself is a filter. So you put it in hot water, and then whatever is inside that little bag just dissolves in the water and affects the water, and then it changes and it becomes what we probably would call tea. So the bag itself is filter. But I think some years back we used to have, some things that like you would put some, like, the actual tea which has been like, like it's been shredded and stuff, and then you put it on some kind of a thing and you pour water on it and it filters it, so it holds the actual leaves, but then it gets the water out. So, well, I don't need to labor that point because obviously a filter is just what it is. So anything that can hold something and filter something through there, that's what a filter is. Then it talks about a filter also in, in photography. In photography, normally, yeah, thank you so much. It's called, well, a strainer. Yes, I think that's the way. That's the way. So you put the leaves into a strainer. You put some, some hot water, and then that drops in there, and it filters the whole stuff. So in photography, normally you have what they call a filter, which is something that you put in front of the lens, the camera lens. You put it there, and then so what that does is that, it controls the either the color of the picture, that the image that you're trying to capture, or it controls the intensity of the light that has to come through the camera. So you find that you have that kind of a filter. So you put that there, and it adjusts it to adjust the light or the color that should come through the camera. Another way where it was defined was in computers. I'm sure nowadays every one of us, I'm sure, has heard the word algorithm. So, an algorithm is nothing much but just a filter. So the owners, obviously, of, all these social media platforms like Facebook and all the different ones, they would put a filter there. So what they do is they will categorize. So if you go and you look for something, and they are watching behind the scenes, and they see that you like football or whatever, and then, they put that filter there, and then they begin to send all the, issues about football. They start sending them through to you. So they have filtered the whole your platform, so to speak, and depending on the activity that's happening there, so they are sorting, they are prioritizing, and they are blocking some things, and they are allowing some things through. So that's another filter. So and then obviously we have what we call, email filters. So some people will set their email in such a way that certain, in fact, you I think nowadays you don't really need to set it up in that way. I think it just comes with it, where you have a filter there, and any message that sounds like a spam, things like, oh, congratulations, you've just won a ticket to Las Vegas or something, then it just goes straight into the junk. So there's a filter there that is not allowing stuff to come through, and it's just sending it. The moment there is a mention of something, congratulations, you are the lucky winner of £1 million, and it just sees it, and it's like, this is just junk, and it just goes straight into the junk box. So there is a filter again. So I just gave these different examples because when I was looking for these definitions, I realized that actually the filter was being defined according to how it was being used in photography. It means something in computers, it means something, and then as a noun, it has a different definition, and so on. Now, I was saying that when we are listening and when we are communicating with one another, we also do have the filters. Every one of us has some filters, whether we like it or we don't. We do have filters. So everything that comes in, everything that we are hearing, we have like that thin sort of plastic across, and that's regulating the intensity of the light or the color that's coming in. Or we can put it in form of a strainer. We have a strainer, in our mind, somewhere in our brain, we have a strainer. So everything that's coming in, it's being sorted. Or we have like an email kind of filter, where any mention of something like, congratulations, you are the winner of this, it just goes straight into the junk. So we all do have those filters, and those are some of the things that when we are communicating, we don't normally think about, we don't normally pay particular attention to. And obviously the whole point of this exercise is to draw ourselves to the fact that we do have filters. So when we are listening to people talking to us, we have some filters. Now, how do these filters come about? These filters come about because of our past experience, so good or bad, the way someone treated us in the past, or the way someone handled us in the past, and we do not want to have a repeat of that. So we don't want anyone to take advantage of us, or if it's a good thing, the way someone treated us, which was lovely, which was wonderful, and that leaves some kind of a filter within our mind. So every time anything that looks like that comes across, then we are more willing and ready to appreciate, or to embrace it, because it's connected to a wonderful or a good feeling that we at one point had because of that experience that we had. Sometimes it could be our background, the way we were raised, the way we were talked to when we were young, and good or bad. It's not always bad. Sometimes it's good, it's good, it's positive. So we grow up, and we have those filters that normally become built in our system. So how does this matter? So this is important, because when we are in a relationship and we are trying to have a conversation with our spouse, if we are not intentionally drawn to think about what the filters that may be in our mind are, we find that we begin to respond a certain way. So certain words come to us and we respond a certain way because there is a filter there and we don't realize it. Certain things are said to us and straight away we respond a certain way because there is a filter. So you give an example because of maybe the way someone was treated, as a man, in some kind of an, in a certain context, you begin to say, no, a woman should not talk to me like that because I'm a man. Or similarly, it will be a lady, she would say, a man should not talk to me like that, because if he talks to me like that, it brings up those, or it reminds us of the way someone talked to us and how they took advantage of us and how they messed everything up. And so that filter stays over there. So we come with these positive or negative filters in our conversations, but the most important thing is to be it's self-awareness. I think, to sit down and just to, when we conversate or when we talk about things, it triggers certain things, is to be able to draw back and to pray and ask God to show us where, where the issue might be, where the filter might be. And that would help us to begin to be self-conscious. And when we are talking to someone, we begin to realize that, okay, so this person I'm talking to is different. This person is not like that person that did this, but the person that did that left the filter there, which now begins to affect the other person. So the other, the other time, I think I was talking to someone who, are just they were doing their driving lessons and whatever, and they were saying, to me, that they always had problems, they always had challenges when it came to, negotiating the roundabout. Somehow they felt that they would just not be able to control the car. Somehow, just at the roundabout, everything just gets all messed up. And when we were having this conversation, so this person says to me, I sat back and I thought about why in all circumstances I'll be okay, but when I just get to the roundabout, somehow I have a feeling that I am going to either run, or I'm going to hit the curb, or maybe someone might hit me or something like that. And because they took time to look within themselves and to think about what was going on, they came up with an answer. And then they realized that some time way back, I think when they were really young, they were in this vehicle that was being driven. And when they were at the roundabout, they were making that turn, and another vehicle was coming and just came straight and hit into them. So that had, marked that person. It had marked them. It stayed within them, as maybe you may call it, like strong words, like maybe a trauma or something. But I would prefer maybe just calling it something that sticks in the mind and stays there. So it just showed itself now when it was time for them now to begin to drive. And every time they were at roundabout, without really realizing that this is what is happening, they were just full of fear that someone might just hit them. So those are some of the things that normally come into play when we are trying to have a conversation. So when we are talking, say for instance, we are talking to our spouse, and I think I'll put this as maybe just like maybe a question or something. We are trying to listen to our spouse trying to say something, and and they say something, and we instead of hearing what they have said, we hear something else that we hear something else. So like I can, like an example, someone is talking to you and you are thinking about how are they, you are thinking about, are they trying to control me? So when say for instance I'm having a conversation with Mwango, I think those days, because of what we went through in our early days in our marriage and everything, there were those filters that were built in. So I was always thinking, is she trying to control me? So even when she comes and she's trying to suggest something, in my mind, I am thinking she is trying to control me. So she may be saying something, but I am hearing control, control, control. So that's the filter. So any mention of any word to suggest that I do something, I am hearing control. So I don't know whether what I have talked about is something that you can relate in your like maybe day-to-day situation, or in whatever environment you are in, whether when someone, particularly obviously in marriage in this case, whether when the husband or the wife is trying to say something, we are hearing they are trying to control me. And because we are hearing that they're trying to control me, then instead of being able to validate the fact that they feel really angry about something, instead of agreeing and saying to them, I understand why you feel like that, the filter is saying, no, 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 they're up to controlling you. So they want you to get onto their side. So without really me thinking so much about what's playing in my mind, I will just respond according to what I'm hearing and not really what's being said. And because I've not taken time to really understand how I should be able to communicate, hear, listen, then I find myself in a cycle whereby every time we try to have a conversation, because something is playing in my mind, I respond a certain way. And she doesn't quite understand why I don't get what she's trying to say all the time. And we stay on the same mountain year in, year out, because I have not dealt or have not looked into my own filter to see what that filter is doing. Another example would be, like someone is talking to us. This happens even in work or in other environments, particularly in marriage as well. When someone says something, the first thing we hear is criticism. They are, even when someone is trying to give constructive criticism, what we hear is they are trying to criticize me. So there is something wrong with me. That's why they are trying to criticize me. And the response will be to try and defend ourselves by speaking back or by saying something, because we feel we have been criticized. So we just hit back and respond back. And the person who tried to convey that message doesn't quite understand why our reaction or our response was like that. So they try again, and in our mind, because of that filter, we are hearing criticism. So there are so many different ways in which these filters normally would affect us. And I would, in the next maybe just maybe 5 or so minutes, we should be winding down. I would love to hear what some of the filters that you probably may have identified as you've been going along, what those filters are. I've just given, I think, 2 examples of maybe hearing control, hearing criticism. I don't know what other filters that can be suggested. So I think it will be interesting to hear what other filters that might be there. So if you can think of any filter, please by all means share with us so that we can hear about that filter. So yeah, so those are some of the negative filters that normally you would get from someone when they are trying to communicate, or when they're trying to convey, when they're trying to say something. Because of that filter, we're hearing something else. There are so many different things that we could hear. Sometimes when someone is trying to communicate something, we are trying to hear who is wrong and who is right in this situation. So we are just waiting to hear between the two of us who is wrong, who is right. So that would be because there is a filter there. The other thing would be, like relating it to ourselves, or when something is said, we relate it back to ourselves, instead of really hearing what someone has actually said, but we take it from our experience, or from what we have seen, or from what we have heard, or what we have experienced, and then we you know we take that as describing maybe ourselves. So that would be another filter that might be there. But the point really to take away is that when we are in a conversation, there will also be something that will be present that we sometimes are not very conscious of, and that would be the filter. So the way to deal with the filter is just being able to be self-aware, and to be able to really take some time and look into ourselves, and look into our past, and look into our experiences, and see how our experiences or our past have actually brought about that filter in our mind. So we've got a contribution. So yes, so I think that as we all grow through life's experiences, we develop filters that make us more aware of what either hurt or made a positive impact on us. So in that way, having self-awareness places us in a better position to filter or sift the good from the bad. Although communicating that awareness can also help to make your position clearer. Yes, absolutely. I think that's so true. These filters, obviously, as we are going through life, as it's been mentioned, we normally pick them up, and filters sometimes can be a coping sort of mechanism, or it can be a defense mechanism, trying to block us from going through the similar sort of hate that we went through. Or it can be something that can cause us to put the guard down, instead of really being a bit more defensive when it comes to dealing with things. We just put our guard down, and we don't really suspect anything. We don't ask any questions. We don't inquire anything, because the last time something like this happened, it was a positive thing. So that has left a filter there, which has made us to, not to really question anything, just to take everything as gospel truth. And I know this is quite common in certain circles where we don't question certain things, we just take them as they are. But yeah, so those are some of the negative filters. We will spend some time also, I think, next week, probably just to develop it a little bit more, and talk about some of the positive filters, which obviously would relate to what we've talked about already. um so yeah, so next week, I think, because due to time, obviously we can't get into that one. We will try and deal with that next week when we meet, and hopefully my gorgeous wife will be sitting by my side, and we shall be together. I am expecting her at least to be here quite soon. So yeah, once again, thank you so much for coming around and being able to to keep me company. I appreciate your comments. I appreciate your interactions, and I hope our conversation this evening has given you something to really, something just to think about, something to, try and be conscious of whenever we have those sort of difficult conversation, knowing that there is another element, there is another layer that we may not be conscious of. But as we begin to develop that self-awareness, then we begin to realize that there is that element which we have to deal with, and which we have to be conscious of. So yeah, thank you so much. I agree with that point in terms of being guarded or dropping our guard. Yes, sometimes we are quick to think that someone is judging our actions and we get defensive before we actually listen to what they have to say. Absolutely. We do that instead of just being there and listening to what they have to say. The moment they mention one word, we're like, I am done. You are not talking to me like that. I think I was like that a lot in our early days in our marriage. But yeah, I think I've grown over the years, and I have moved away from that. So now I just sit there, wonder, and look under, and just ask myself, where is this coming from? This is definitely not me. This must be coming from somewhere else. And then we try and investigate, and for sure we find that actually it just came from somewhere else. And I don't beat myself about that. So yeah, so thank you. I will pass that message to her. She's been missed today. But thank you so much for the encouragement. May the Lord bless you. May the Lord keep you. May he cause his face to shine upon you, and may he be gracious to you, and may he give you peace, shalom, nothing missing and nothing broken. So may the Lord bless you and have a great weekend, and hopefully we'll see you next week. So shalom, shalom, and God bless.